RT is sitting down with Richard Stallman, American software freedom activist. Richard, thank you very much for sitting down with us today. You are the founder of the Software Freedom Foundation in the United States. What is free software? Why is it important?
Free software is software that respects the user's freedom and the social solidarity of the user's community. Specifically, it means that you have 4 essential freedoms. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. There are proprietary programs that restrict the use of the authorized copies even. And you have freedom 1, which is the freedom to study the source code and then change it to make the program do what you wish. This means you control it instead of it controlling you. And you have freedom 2, which is the freedom to help your neighbor. That's the freedom to redistribute exact copies. So you're free to share, free to republish. And you have freedom 3, which is the freedom to contribute to your community. And that is the freedom to distribute copies of your modified version. So if you study the source code and change it to make something you like better, you can distribute that, give it away or sell it to others. So the result is the users are in control. Both individually and collectively, the users are in control.
You campaign against the extension of copyright laws in the United States. What's wrong with copyright law in the U.S.?
Copyright law in the U.S. is far too strict. Now, in the case of software is a special case because there are many things that developers do to make software proprietary and restrict the users. Copyright's just one of them and not the main one. But for lots of other things, copyright is what stops users from fully utilizing the published works they have copies of. But there's a minimum freedom we must have, which is the freedom to non-commercially share copies of any published work. And likewise, there are works of art and entertainment, which is a different category serving society in a different way. But for those also, I think we must have that minimum freedom to non-commercially share exact copies. And the copyright on art should expire in 10 years, and then people should be free to publish modified versions, which are new works of art and contribute to art.
In your work, you've come up with the notion of copyleft. What is that exactly?
Copyleft is a way that I use copyright law to guarantee freedom for all users of all versions of a work. I started using it on free software. I wanted to be able to write a free program and hand out, give, or sell copies to other people, and I wanted them to have the 4 freedoms. But what happens when they redistribute a copy to you? What happens if John changes the program and then gives or sells you a copy? Do you get the 4 freedoms also? I wanted to make sure you would get the 4 freedoms, so I wrote a copyright-based license to make sure you get the 4 freedoms, and that technique of writing licenses, that is copyleft.
Let's talk about ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement. The United States government is said to be working on this agreement with a range of other countries in secrecy, and one of the things this act would allow the U.S. government to do is allegedly go through people's computers. How do you feel about this?
This is an assault on our freedom, and it demonstrates that we don't have real democracy. The U.S. government is on the side of the megacorporations that pay the congressmen and pay the president's campaign, and basically they rule us. We have a corporatocracy. As long as business has more political power than the people, democracy is sick, and you have to expect injustice as the result.
Let's talk about privacy of a computer. Some people say there's basically no privacy. Whatever you do on the internet, it can be found out, it can be accessed. Is this true?
It's partly true and partly not. If you're using Windows, Microsoft can examine what you do. There are spy features known in Windows. And what's more, Microsoft has the power to forcibly change the software without asking you. So anything they're not spying on today, they could put in a feature tomorrow to spy on that, and they don't have to ask you for your approval before they install it. Similar problems exist in macOS. I don't know of any existing spy features in macOS, but it has a similar backdoor allowing Apple to forcibly change the software at any time. So if it doesn't spy today, it could start spying tomorrow. Now, as a separate matter, a lot of internet traffic is being monitored, for instance, by the US government, and in Europe, internet service providers are required to keep records for 2 years of what websites someone contacts, and so on. So a lot of things are being monitored, but not necessarily everything. And in particular, the substance of what you are sending someone can be protected using encryption, and there's free software such as the GNU Privacy Guard and SSH, which can be used to send encrypted files or maintain an encrypted connection with another computer. They'll know you're talking to that computer, they'll know you're sending email to a certain address, but they won't know what you said.
One of the things you talk about on your personal website is you warn American citizens of not buying printers that report their activities to the police. What exactly are you talking about there?
A lot of laser printers are designed so that they print little yellow dots that state which printer printed the paper and when. And as I see that, that's an assault on people's privacy. The stated reason for putting on those yellow dots is to stop people from using those printers to counterfeit money. Well, I think that's a legitimate purpose, but they could very easily limit the yellow dots to things that look at least a little bit like a banknote, and thus avoid attacking our privacy for everything else.
In your work, you say that copying and sharing material is not piracy. Can you explain that?
Piracy is attacking ships, and it's something very bad. But sharing with your neighbor is good, so I refuse to smear sharing and cooperation using a propaganda term like, quote, piracy, unquote.
Now, you also often talk about the Patriot Act in America, and it's been causing a lot of controversy over the last several years. How do you feel about it?
I refuse to call that law by the name that those undemocratic and tyrannical legislators gave it, because there's nothing patriotic in a country whose existence is based on the idea of freedom in a law designed to attack people's freedom. I call it the USAP at Riot Act, which actually is the same initials. I just put spaces in different places. Instead of USA Patriot Act, I call it USAP at Riot Act. But what's so bad about it? Well, for one thing, it gives the police the power to go to a business and say to the business, give us all their records about Richard Stallman or Anastasia or anyone else, without even getting a court order. They can collect all these records every day. They can go to the library and find out what books you borrowed without a court order. There are just no limits on what they can demand in information about you and me. That is tyranny.
What should people do to make sure that what they do with their personal computer, what they do on the internet, remains private? Is there anything one can do? If you're not doing anything illegal, if you're just getting your work done or researching information or whatever it is, how can you ensure that what you do remains private?
There are a number of things you have to do. One thing is make sure you're using a free operating system, because they have generally much better security. They have better security against unknown third parties, and in addition, the proprietary operating systems have no security at all against the developer of the system, and as I explained before, those developers introduce lots of malware into the systems they make. So you're completely unsafe if you're using proprietary operating systems. You've got to worry about governments that practice censorship to the point where they even arrest people for what they read, like the government of Britain, which arrested, I believe, 2 people at a university because they downloaded a document from a U.S. government website. They were studying terrorism academically, and they downloaded a document which Al-Qaeda had published, and the U.S. government put it up to show, look what Al-Qaeda is saying. And these people in Britain downloaded it, they got arrested just for looking at it. Now, people dealing with governments like that have to protect themselves. You got to get out of the habit of thinking, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I have nothing to fear. That might be true under some government that respected human rights.
Richard Stallman, thank you very much for sitting down with us.